So what you see here is the beginning of two simple experiments to demonstrate what we've been learning in class. The first one will demonstrate the fact that when something is heated or warmer, the molecules are moving much quicker and faster. And when something is colder, the molecules are moving much slower. I have two small beakers here, and I'm going to be placing 3 drops of dye in each. And from the result, you should hopefully be able to tell which one is the warmer, heated up water, and which one is the colder, and thus molecules moving much slower water. Now, as you watch the dye disperse, you can notice that the beaker that I put the dye in second actually has the dye spreading out quite quickly. That's because the molecules are moving much faster and thus hitting the molecules of the dye and spreading them out. The first beaker, you can tell the dye is moving much slowly. In fact, you can still see parts that haven't even filled in yet. And that is because this water is much colder, molecules are moving much slower, thus not dispersing the dye as quickly as the first. The second simple demonstration will be of cold water, which will be, in this case, blue, and warm water, in this case, red, and I'm going to place them in the larger beaker. And we know that the molecules move faster when something's heated up. We also know that because they move faster, they're more spread out and less dense. Opposite being true for the cold. When it's moving slower, it's more compact and more dense. And we'll see what happens when they're placed in the flask of room temperature water. Now, if you notice, the water that is much colder, which is colored blue, is not moving from the flask. It's actually much more dense than the room temperature water. Thus, it wants to sink and is just staying in the flask. However, the water in the flask that has been colored red, which has been heated, is rising. That's because it's much less dense than the room temperature water. Because by heating it, the molecules have been made to move much faster and have spread out, again becoming less dense. So this simple demonstration can show you that when something is heated, the molecules will not only speed up, the dye that spread out quicker illustrated that, but also spread out. As you can see, the red dye rising, less dense than the room temperature water, while the blue dye wants to sink because it's more dense than the room temperature water, thus doesn't leave the flask. Simple experiment, simple results, hopefully easy to see, easy to understand.